teachers or professors of Redit, what is the most elaborate cheating scheme you've stumbled upon? The best I have seen was a student made a large poster board cheat sheet and hung it up in the teacher's classroom, which already had plenty of poster on the wall. He would just read right off it and got away with it once, but got caught after he tried the second time. This was in a high school class. My class once got a test in primary school where we had to write part of a chapter from memory, and the teacher forgot that the chapter was stuck up on the wall. Embarrassingly, I still failed it. In my friend's finals macroeconomics exam, a student drew all of the necessary graphs on the chalkboard about an hour before the exam and then lightly erased them. Because the professor doesn't proctor the exam and it's normally just a secretary or a different teacher, they didn't notice the faint graphs on the board. He said it was the easiest final he had ever taken and that most of the class also noticed the graphs at some point during the final. One of my friends found the login information for her teacher's computer written on a post-it note on the first day of classes. She used it before each test to get the answer key, printed it out, then would make a color bead bracelet and wear it to class on test days. Red equals A, blue equals B type thing. She wore a bead bracelet every day to not raise suspicion. Edit. One of my professors told me about catching two sisters cheating in sign language once. Apparently they had a deaf brother. Damn. That bracelet trick is pretty good. I'll have to use next time I get the answer key. We had a Spanish exam which was a large question we had to write an essay about. We were given the question before time and were allowed to prepare but went into the exam blind. We were then told the test would take place in the library on computers. I simply wrote my essay, made all the text white and saved it as new document. When test day came around, I slowly highlighted and made the text black until it was finished. When I was 15 we had to do a similar sort of thing for French class. My friend wrote out his essay and stuck it to the ceiling before the class started. He made about 5 minutes into the test before he was caught. I'm an English teacher in South Korea. And though I didn't actually witness it, they just cancelled the SAS for the whole damn country because the cheating was so bad. Copies of the tests were circulating through the Hagwons. Not a professor. Just a college student. There's a kid in my department who at the beginning of each quarter will tell his professors that he has a bladder control problem. Once at class he'll discreetly excuse himself to use the restroom. That way when it comes time for finals he can get up and read off a cheat sheet in the bathroom. Working that long con, you're in trouble. Oh my god. I'll downvote myself for that one. In junior high school, I bought the teacher's edition of the textbooks, which had all of the answers. On more than one occasion I went into the office right after the teacher printed the test and hit reprint last job. No surprises there. I also got caught cheating when my college was testing Turnitin.com. I had published my paper on my personal site which had been crawled, and subsequently was a word-for-word duplicate of what I turned in. I really hope you did not get in trouble for the last one. If you did, you should have explained to them that it was your website. I knew a student whose dad was blind. He, the student, had learned to read Braille when he was younger. He would make Braille cheat sheets and read them in his coat pocket or tape them under his desk and read them as he went. As far as I know he never got caught. A guy advertises in Craigslist for someone to write his exams for him. Basically, we take him up on it as a kind of sting operation. B, not me, but a group living in the same house all took the same courses, designating one person per course. The 4 others feigned illness on the day of the final exam while the designated person wrote and copied down the exam. Reschedule all missed exams. The only reason they were caught was that the administrative assistant in charge of scheduling makeup exams realized they were all at the same mailing address. So, F-king. Close. I once had a student slide his desk 3 feet to the right so his was resting against the student next to him. He also put his left arm under his jacket and had it zipped down halfway, with some kind of light source coming out up of it. I did not have very sly students. I cheated on every math test I've ever taken by programming the formulas and my notes into my TI-84 calculator. Once I had a teacher say that he would be checking our calculators for custom programs used for cheating. So I made a program that basically made a proxy calculator. I ran the program, gave it to the teacher. He hit the program button, and a copied picture of the program menu came up. He gave the calculator back to me and said I was all set. Proxy calc. Smart. But could it bear deeper inspection? Like pressing clear or enter? One of my teachers told me the craziest one she foiled. They would write very tiny words on small rubber bands with a pen, then stretch them around a water bottle and use the water to magnify the words on the rubber band. That group would also use subtle baseball call signs representing A, B, C, or D. In her own words, if they spent half the effort they put into cheating into studying for the test, they would have been amazing students. If they spent half the effort they put into cheating into studying for the test, they would have been amazing students. I think this applies to all elaborate cheaters. Nothing elaborate. But I had 3 9th graders use chapstick on their final exam. If you put chapstick on the little bars of a Scantron paper, it causes the machine to not grade it. It didn't work out. First, it makes it not grade it instead of grading it all as correct. Maybe they should have only chapped some of it. Second, they used minty chapstick, and it had an odor that made it pretty easy to detect. Third, it was visible when it dried. Once I saw one, I could easily see them all. They all got F's on the test, and our finals counted for 10% of their grades, or something like that. 2 of the kids had F's or D's, so it wasn't a big deal. The other one had a C and could have passed the class by getting like a 10 on the test. But this 0 dropped him into failing the class. His mom was pretty upset. What were they trying to achieve? Did they think it would grade every answer as correct? If the machine wouldn't do it, the teacher would just grade it by hand. Student swapped out components of a TI-89 and had a Wi-Fi enabled Wikipedia browser reader. Wasn't even mad. My aunt is a university professor. I remember she would come home and tell us about her students and the newest cheat techniques they used. Here are some. 1. Photocopy parts of the textbook to make a pocketbook and secretly take it out during the exam. 2. Nail art. 3. Girls with cheat sheets on their legs, covered by the skirt. 4. People pretending to be deaf and in need of a hearing aid. 5. People taking out a piece of gum to chew. The wrapper had stuff written on it. 6. Students inviting the professor to get him drunk and open his suitcase to check the test. 7. People taking turns to go to the restroom. There was a book hidden in there. 8. If you have enough time to paint cheat sheets onto your fingernails, you definitely have enough time to study. Moth King nail art takes hours to do. I'm a teacher now, but I was a student at the time. When I took the acts, many moons ago, you could bring a TI-83 graphing calculator for the test, but the teachers would delete all of the programs. I knew several people who would write all of the trig formulas as graph text and save them as pics. It worked. I think back upon my youth as a way to keep myself vigilant. One of the dumber guys in my high school American history class always cheated off my work on tests. If he hadn't been such a dick about it, I probably wouldn't have FK'd him over. But he was a total asshole to me every day. We had a test at the end of the year that was going to be half the semester grade. I couldn't call this guy out for cheating since every time I tried he'd get the rest of the football team after me. So I got this idea. I talked to the teacher before class the day of the test. It was multiple choice with a few true-false sections. I adjusted all my answers. If the right answer was A, then I put B. If B, I put C. Rotating back to A for the last letter. For true-false I just marked opposite. She thought it was hilarious. I got 100%. Plus extra credit for my scheme. He got 0 and got kicked off the football team. I am not a professor or teacher, but I know coming into college there is a story about some students at my college that were kicked out for writing answers on goldfish crackers, passing them and then eating them. Weirdest scheme I had ever heard of. Who passes individual goldfish crackers? I mean, you're just setting yourself up to get caught. Graham crackers maybe. I wore a t-shirt with Maxwell's equations to my electrodynamics final. Edit. Some people might have thought that this was really an attempt at cheating. It would be like wearing a shirt that said 1 + 1 = 2 to an algebra test. A few classmates did this. You know those NAPLAN tests you have to take? Or the ones where you circle or shade a number or circle? Yeah. Well, basically, a classmate would say, "Excuse me teacher, could you please explain question, whatever the question is, to me?" Full stop. After the teacher had helped them, about 10 seconds later someone would begin sharpening their pencil. The number of times it was sharpened was the number you had to circle. Worked for about 3-4 months before the teacher worked it out and banned sharpeners during those tests. Little did she know the students planned for this. And at their disposal they had erasers. And the amount of rubs is the number you have to fill in. Girls in my high school would put Nauticas in their shirts and blatantly act like they were staring at their tits. Teachers never did anything because they didn't want to risk an accusation of sexual harassment. Edit. I cheated in English class. Is there anything a teacher can do in that situation? I'm not a prof. Just a student that never got busted. I used to buy a bottle of Coke the day before the exam. Take it home that night and use a blow dryer to melt the glue on the label. Peel the label back. Write down cheat notes. Glue it back together. Day of exam. Bring Coke with me. Take a few sips only. Then perpetually sip at it, never actually consuming it now. Every time I tipped the bottle, the answers revealed themselves on the inside of the label. The dark, opaque liquid, never consumed below the upper part of the label, disguised the notes. In high school, we used to have blue chairs on our desks. Get some construction paper the same color as the chair. Write cheat notes on it. Stuff in back pocket. During exam, pull out of back pocket. Slide under ass to position between legs. Spread legs and look down whenever you need the notes. Need to just pretend you're grabbing at your balls. Teenage boys are always having to adjust their junk. And the teacher would intentionally look away when you did. I hope I'm not too late. Because I have the best one ever. At the University of Texas, there was one American Sign Language class where there was an A average, when most of the other classes had a low B average. It turns out that the teacher was deaf and didn't have an assistant. So people were just yelling out the answers to one another without moving their lips during the exam. One of the students finally felt bad and ratted everyone out. From then on, someone who could hear would sit in on the exams. Mostly a class full of athletes. I took ASL in college and one of the professors thought it would be an interesting social experiment if he told his class that he was deaf. In actuality, he's hearing, so he heard every question and whisper the class said when they didn't think he could hear them. At the end of the quarter when he told the class that he's hearing, there were some pretty embarrassed students. Nothing dramatic. But I had a friend doing aerospace engineering in college. He was a little bit of a pushover. And let a roaring dumbass cheat off him. I just need help for one more test. I'll fail. Please please. Close bracket. This lasted about 4 semesters. In the end of their program, due to his good grades now, the dumbass has a job at a major airplane manufacturer. Hope that makes you feel safe at the airport. A few students in my geometry class used Morse code with blinking. The sequence of blinks was the letter you had to fill in. If it was a number, it would be any number of short blinks up to 9 and then a long blink meaning next number. 2 long blinks meant point X. 1. 274. That must be fun to watch, an entire class of kids blinking elaborately and purposefully randomly. Doesn't really answer your question. But in elementary school one textbook had the answers in the back. But in code. It was a simple cipher. I broke the code and had all the answers. Was it a cryptography textbook? I caught a special education teacher cheating for a kid in my class. He took the test with her. And she was always pressing for us, his teachers, to move his grade. I was suspicious. I put a difficult question on an exam that was easy to Google and that I never taught. He came back with the answer straight from the interwebs, and when pressed told me she helped him along in this way many times. That teacher was verbally reprimanded and I was assured she was nearly fired. The next year she was promoted. I left the profession. A few years ago one of my Comp C profs told us a story about a student who was copying his friend's code. But it looked completely different and anti-plagiarizing software didn't detect it. But he knew it was copied. Turns out the guy wrote some crazily complicated program that understood the code well enough to translate it into different code. I can write ridiculously tiny. When I was in school I would write tiny cheat sheets and hide them inside the hand I write with. The hole where the index finger meets the thumb is a perfect window to read the paper. And if the teacher walked by I simply had to turn my hand to conceal it. Never missed a vocab word. One night I was sitting in a hot tub talking to a few guys. And one of them told me stories about how he used to cheat. He was from South Korea. And it was his first year in the US. Since he didn't know English very well, or so they thought, they allowed him to use a translation sheet for tests. The sheet was supposed to have translations of basic terms. But he just wrote down all the important points of the chapter in Korean instead. They never caught him. And to this day this is still the most simple, yet brilliant, cheating scheme I have ever heard of. I thought finals were over. Clever ploy OP. I once saw two kids FaceTiming each other with their iPhones facing each other's test to compare their answers. Neither of them were caught by the teacher. And they both failed the test. Karma. Students in a second-year Spanish class in high school were allowed to listen to music during exams to decrease anxiety. A bunch of them recorded themselves saying all the vocab and concepts in Spanish and listened to their recording during the exam. The only reason they were found out was one kid's headphones got unplugged and everyone heard his voice from his iPod. Well, that just sounds ridiculously stupid on the school's part. My wife is a high school French and Spanish teacher. She frequently catches students who have written out their assignments in English and then fed them into Google Translate. Usually the kids have just printed the output page, with the web address still attached. Edit. Accidentally a punctuation. Also, those things don't translate sentences and paragraphs well at all. My French teacher said she could tell if it was translated just by how incorrect and strange it was. Unless perhaps translators vastly improved in the last 5 years. I caught students taking pictures of their tests from first hour and sending them to everyone taking them in subsequent hours. Teachers or professors of Redit. Help me cheat in my upcoming exams. I had an American history teacher who had really bad vision problems. The light in the classrooms hurt his eyes, so he would always wear sunglasses in the classroom. Because of this he couldn't see very well in the classroom. His teaching method was to teach from his own notes. He would give us a test that basically had each sentence from his notes but with fill in the blanks. So on our final this group of kids made an elaborate plan to cheat on the final and pass. What they did was seat each person from their group in different parts of the room and call him over for help. Each person would take turns calling him over and stalling him while the others would look at the notes on their phone and fill in the answers. They all passed the class with high A's. If I ask for help on a test, the teacher doesn't do shit. Years ago, a month or so before the Swedish SAT, my brother bought a watch mobile phone hybrid equipped with a camera. See where this is going? During the test, he would simply video call my phone, turn the watch facing downwards on his wrist and scan an entire page of questions. And I would print screen every single one of them, while my brother moved on to the next page of questions. Me and two of his friends calmly divided the questions between us and found the answers through Google and such. And then texted the answers back. Unfortunately the watch started beeping loudly due to bad batteries after a page or two and my brother had to terminate the operation. Oh. And he also somehow faked dyslexia and got 50% longer test time than others. Something I did. We used some sort of program to solve math equations and my friend really struggled to even use a computer. So I installed a program to remotely control the PC and make it seem like he was actually doing it. I sat down behind him and we disconnected his PC's mouse and keyboard and I did all the work. The teacher didn't notice because the keyboard and the mouse were hidden under the desk. There was a scheme that we were planning but never got around to use it. We bought 2 FM transmitters online. Connected them to some fancy tiny headsets. We also let our hair grow wild and hid them under our shiny manes. We cinched them and could talk with them. Like some fancy ass walkie-talkies. We were going to use them but our professor made 2 different tests and we ended up with different ones. We lost them in a poker game a few nights later and never bothered making them again.